What's up? Welcome to Updates with Mr. Warford. That was for all y'all people that were trying to say that I wasn't bringing the heat in my updates videos anymore. That was for y'all. Okay, so a little review. For integrated social studies. Is it bad that I'm out of breath after that? For a little review for integrated social studies, we've been talking about the legislative branch. Believe it or not, this is the last week of our legislative branch unit. The United States Congress, made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives, correct? Each state gets 2 senators to represent them in the legislative branch. Why do states get different numbers of representatives in the House? We should already know that it's because in the House of Rep, it's based on the population of each state, depending on the size of their population. So, for example, the state of New York gets 27 representatives in the House of Rep, and North Dakota gets 1 because their populations are so different. So the House of Representatives is broken up into people that represent districts, okay? There's 435 members of the House of Rep, and they all represent something called a district, and it's a chunk of land, a geographic area, and they represent the people that live in that area. They're their government representative. Every 10 years, something called a census is taken, okay? And the census is just a survey that every citizen of the United States has to take, and they try to figure out generally the population numbers of each state. So here's an example of the state of Ohio, Congressional Districts. Now this is an old map. There could have been changes since then, but this is an example of Congressional Districts. So here's an example from Kentucky. So based on population, Kentucky has 6 districts and 6 members of the House of Representatives. So these geographic chunks here are 1 district, and all those people are represented by a man or woman in the U.S. House of Representatives in Congress. Okay, hopefully we're making sense so far. So after the census, so every 10 years we take this survey to see how many people live in America and how many people live in each state. So after the census, the federal government decides how many representatives each state gets, and that's called reapportionment. The thing that we're going to focus on today is this thing called redistricting. So every time we get new census data, state legislatures, remember our government is broken up into federal and state levels, so state legislatures redraw their districts if necessary if we have any population shifts, and this is called redistricting. We're going to focus on this today. So who cares? Warford, we take a census, we may draw some squiggly lines on a map, and that's who these people in the House represent. Well, it's a little more complicated than that, and it can lead to some issues in U.S. elections. So U.S. politics, as we've talked about this year, is very divided between Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, remember from Unit 2. So they are very focused on winning elections so that they can affect the government in the way that they best see fit. So whoever has the majority of power in state legislatures at the moment of the census, okay, they get to redraw the districts, or they'll have more influence on that. If you have more Democrats in a state legislature or more Republicans, those are the people that get to redraw the districts. So naturally, we run into this conflict of interest or this problem. Whoever has the majority in state legislatures will draw the districts in favor of their party for future elections. So then we end up with districts that look like this because they study voting habits in different geographical areas. They study voter turnout, and whoever is in power at the moment in the state legislature, if it's that 10-year mark when we get the census data, they'll try to redraw or possibly could be tempted to redraw districts in funky ways like this. And those funky ways, when you do that, that's called gerrymandering. And yes, that's a real a real political term. Gerrymandering, you need to know this for your test. It's when you draw the boundaries of districts in bizarre shapes to favor one political party. The reason it's called gerrymandering, long story short, back in the 1800s, there was a representative named Elbridge Gerry, and he did this, and they made this political cartoon based off this funky district that was drawn in his state, and they called it a gerrymander because it looked like a salamander. Get it? But that's cornier than my jokes that I use in class. But that's why they call it gerrymandering. So here's an example of how drawing districts can lead to some issues. So if you look at this little diagram, in all three of these little diagrams, it's the same number of red boxes and the same number of blue boxes. But you'll notice that when you draw them differently, you get different outcomes. So in this one, we've got 60% is blue, 40% is red. But when we start to draw our districts, you can draw it up where blue wins, and you can draw it up where red wins. The numbers don't change. The shape of the districts is what changed, and that can lead to different outcomes in elections. So again, why do I care? What's the problem? If you see these things happening with redistricting every 10 years, or if they try to practice what's called gerrymandering, we may see lower voter turnout, so people thinking their vote doesn't matter. We have one party becoming more powerful every election year in certain districts. We have creation of districts that negatively affect one ethnic group or race, depending on where they live within a state. And then we see the lack of a sense of community within a district because sometimes they're drawn so crazily, funkily, that there is no sense of community because it's so spread out. So those are some problems that can result in issues with redistricting, like gerrymandering, okay? So what we're going to be doing next is we're going to do a very short assignment where we're going to do a little interactive activity through this website, and there's a link in Google Classroom, and you're going to complete an exit slip. One thing that I want to show you, okay, is when you look at this is the activity you're going to do, and it's going to show you in general terms how a district is drawn. But when it starts, I just want you to know that you'll be drawing lines, and it's as simple as doing this. And then once you do that, you click the play button and you move on. Now let's say, for instance, you need to redo it, okay? You can just redraw the line like this. And then once you redraw the line, it'll let you play. Now, it'll get more difficult as we go, and it's almost like a puzzle to redistrict here with these dots. And again, if you do one and it won't let you move on, you can just go like this and bring it back. But we are going to be completing this interactive activity, and then you will submit your exit slip into Google Classroom. If you have any questions for me, let me know. Have a great day.